On this episode of G.A.S Attacks, let's talk about Fractal Audio Systems products. Fractal Audio, founded in 2006, are pioneers in high-end digital amplifier modeling and effects. In 2025, there are numerous modeling products in the marketplace, and this video is not about comparing, contrasting, or even really demoing the Fractal products, just my personal experience with some of their products and the company itself. Back in the early 2010s, I was performing 3 nights a week at an all-request review. Volume was a concern, so I needed to find something that worked well in an environment that had volume restrictions, like many casinos have. I went from using a Pod Pro, at least I think that's what it was, to one of my tube heads into an ISO cab, and finally, a Fractal Audio G.A.S Effects Ultra. I had heard of Fractal Audio Systems, but never tried any of their products. They had an impressive list of endorsers, so I ended up finding a used Ultra for a reasonable price. I was very impressed. It sounded close enough to the real thing, and the effects were really good. Even after I stopped that gig, I kept using the Ultra for my demos and live musicals, such as Jesus Christ Superstar. It was close in terms of the modeling, but not quite there yet. But for some applications, it was great. Later, I started playing with a band that needed a fair number of effects, and I got tired of pedalboard tap dancing. Fractal had the FX8, which is an effects unit with relays and MIDI capabilities. I ditched my pedalboard and used the FX8 paired with my Rivera K7 head. The control and flexibility were great, but in the 4-cable method, it caused the Rivera to behave strangely, with volume loss and the tone definitely suffered. Eventually I ditched the FX8 and went back to my career as a tap dancer. When the FM3 came out, I was on the original waitlist, and once I finally got it, I was in love. The modeling had come a long ways. I was able to ditch my pedalboard and in fact my tube amp for gigging. I was worried that the 3 buttons were not going to be enough, so I got an FC6 as well. For one of the bands I was in, 3 buttons would have worked fine, but for the one that I needed numerous effects for, I definitely needed the FC6. I really liked the FM3, but it was limiting in the number of reverbs and amps one could run simultaneously. When the FM9 came out, I got on the waiting list and finally got an FM9 Turbo. The FM9 Turbo is great, and in terms of the number of amps, reverbs, and effects that can be run at once, it is awesome. With the firmware update that allowed for seamless switching between amp models and channels in the software, the need for multiple amps really went away for me. I still had an FM3, and for another band that I'm in, I used it with the before mentioned K7 in the 4-cable method, and it rocked. I had the FM3 back with the amp and a FC12 up front with me. It was nice having no power requirements up at the front of the stage, and without having to use the amp models, FM3 was awesome and more than enough horsepower. When that band switched to IEMs, for practice using this setup it was fine, but for tours and shows not so much. Because of this, I ended up getting an G.A.S Effects 3 instead. Now I have no cab on stage, and an FC12 with 1-foot controller up front. The G.A.S Effects 3 is a beast, and really more than I normally need. The only exception to this is for songs where I use synth pads and patches for the guitar at the same time. The synth patches require harmonies, as the synth block in the Fractal stuff is not polyphonic, and this really eats up processing power. So unfortunately, the FM9 cannot cut it in this situation, but the G.A.S Effects 3 Turbo has no issue at all. In terms of settings and features, the Fractal universe can be a black hole. I hardly ever touch the advanced settings, and once I get a sound I like, I tend to stick with it. However, you can go very deep down into the settings if that is your thing. The biggest complaint I see online is the user interface. For my needs, this is not an issue. I will freely admit that I do not tweak via the front panel very much, and I really don't know my way around it very well. I do know players that can navigate the front panel effortlessly, so it's not impossible. The computer UI is great to use, and once I have everything dialed, I really do not need to touch the settings when I'm playing out, except maybe the level to the front of house. The very few times I've ever needed to contact Fractal for support, it's always been a pleasant experience with courteous and helpful responses. The Fractal forum also has a ton of content and helpful people as well. As with almost any forum, there are some bad apple outliers, but they are definitely the exception and not the rule. There is also a lot of paywall and even free tutorial content out there. Leon Todd on YouTube is awesome. He has great content and is a superb player. I did not read the owner's manual for the longest time because of Leon's well-executed and informative videos. I cannot recommend Leon enough. His free IR cab is the bomb too. Depending on your comfort level with tweaking and editing, the Fractal universe may or may not be for you, but I highly recommend their products as very useful tools in the studio and on stage. Well, that wraps up this month's installment of G.A.S Attacks. Until next time, please check out the other segments and music videos on my channel. If you have not subscribed yet, please do. Liking the content and subscribing really helps out my channel. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.